Hi, and welcome to Something for the Weekend, brought to you as always by Together 2012. We're a disability arts organisation based in the main Paralympic host borough of Newham. I'm Ju Gosling, also known as Ju90. I'm an artist and artistic director of Together 2012. And with me in my East London studio, where we've lost count of the weeks, months, and days, but basically I haven't managed to get rid of her since March 2020, is our chair, the artist and activist, Judy Newman. We're going to come back to East London for some audio description and further introductions in a minute. And we're also going to tell you what we're dressing up to go out to stay in to do this week. But first, we're going to go over to the other end of our long virtual wheeled sofa to the West Midlands for some introductions, some audio description, and tell us what you're dressed up to go out to stay in to do this week.
Well, hello everybody. I am Robin Surgener. I'm Business Director at Together 2012 and fellow host of our wonderful TV show. I'm up here in Sutton Coldfield in the West Midlands at the other end of our very, very long sofa in our little broadcast room. Behind us, you'll see some lovely red velvet curtains just there to keep us warm and handsome, obviously. So today, what do I look like? I am wearing, sporting, very clean, white, shiny, grey, white hair. I have apparently distinguishing dark framed glasses on in front of my blue eyes. I am wearing a black round necked t-shirt, which features many guitars. I think there's 12 or 13 guitars on the front of this t-shirt. And the reason I'm wearing this, why I'm dressed up to go out to stay in, is to love to be taking part in one of these mammoth guitar events where they get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of guitarists together to all play like "We Will Rock You" or some really well-known song that everybody plays together to break the world record of guitarists all playing at the same time.
Oh, tell me more about. I'm beginning to sense an idea for the festival. You might have just talked yourself into your job, Robin. I think that would be a wonderful thing to do. And in Terror, they seem to have disappeared and lost their connection. So they're going to be coming back to us in a minute. But first of all, I'm going to go to Julie. Who are you? What do you look like? And what are you dressed up to go out to stay in to do?
Well, it's questions like that that shape the world, really, isn't it? I'm Julie Newman. I'm the chair of Together 2012. Today, I'm sporting a baseball cap with the pride flag on it, which is the rainbow-coloured flag. I have gold and red hair with little silvery bits sort of filtering through it, sort of casually thrown over my shoulders. I'm wearing a navy blue NASA t-shirt with a silver little ship on it to signify little voyages. I've got, whoops, wrong arm. I've got a silver bracelet, a Celtic knot, and a amethyst and black silver sort of expanding bracelet on that arm and a black t-shirt. I'm dressed up to go out to stay in to express solidarity with the LGBTQI plus staff at NASA. That is my NASA t-shirt. I forgot that bit. I've got a NASA insignia, white letters against a blue background with a white circly thing for a satellite circuit and a red streak across the top.
And you're expressing solidarity as well as just because you love space, because it's National Inclusion Week, and we're going to come back and talk about that in a minute. But we've got our West Midlands, they fell off the sofa, they're back again. I think Tracy was just so horrified at the thought of all these people playing guitar at once, particularly was organising it, that yes, it just went from there. Did you have anything else to say about guitars, Robin, or shall we move on to Tracy?
No, I think you'd better safer go that way.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm Tracy Surgener, and today I am wearing a grey head wrap, which with little diamantes in. I'm not sure if you can see them. They're sparkling. I've got pale skin, and you may notice I don't normally wear a lot of jewellery, but today I'm wearing long dropped earrings with little sparkly balls at the end. I'm wearing a see-through camouflage styled long sleeve blouse. I have put a black vest underneath it so you're not seeing my underwear. And I've also got a couple of sparkly bracelets on. Got a silver bracelet with charms on, then I've got a black bead bracelet with a silver centre. And I am dressed up to stay. I'm dressed up to go out to stay in, to go to a clothes exhibition, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later in the show.
Yep. In the second half of the show, we've got the week ahead where we recommend activities online and on TV that are free or mostly free that you can join in with from home and that we're going to be joining in with ourselves. I have to say, you're always the elegant, stylish one, Tracy. We've just been joined by a small molting tabby cat. So if Judy suddenly starts coughing, you'll know why. That was why the monitor was shaking earlier. I would say to new viewers, it's one of those days, but in fact, anarchic pets are a little bit of a feature of our show. So we would try to ignore her, but she'll just start scratching. So, Julie, the stroking is over to you. So, finally, some audio description from me. I'll start with the background. Behind us, we've got the Together 2012 graffiti banner. You can't see much of it, or at least not now the others are back, but that's covered with images of all of the different activities that we cover in the course of a year, from drama, dance, street art, carnival art, live music, visual arts, craft, poetry, spoken word, photography, filmmaking, and I'm sure there's more. So I'll tell you a bit more about that later. Robin, I think if you could turn down your monitor very slightly, I can hear myself in Birmingham, and I don't think anybody else will want to hear me from Birmingham as well as from London at the same time. In front of the graffiti banner, sitting on a sort of silvery laser cut cloth that covers up a load of musical instruments, is our teddy bear who is hoping to wear a medal in the clockwork, well, when the Clockwork Paralympics have finished. And again, that's coming up in the second half of the show. Don't miss the Clockwork Paralympics. We've been running these ever since last March. And I never lose sight of the fact that our glorious multi-Paralympic champion Robin Surgener gets more excited about whether or not he's won the clockwork toy than I suspect he's done about anything else for a long time. So watch for Robin's face and voice when you see the Clockwork Paralympics. That's coming up in about 20 minutes. But first, or I should say last, some audio description from me. I'm a white woman with pale olive skin. I've got green eyes behind black plastic glasses. I've got a black plastic wrist braces, silver coloured jewellery. I'm wearing a black leather cap and I'm wearing a purple t-shirt that says "We know inclusion works." And I'm wearing that in the same way that Julie's dressed up for National Inclusion Week, which is this week, or at least it's this week if you're watching the show the week that it's recorded. Otherwise, it's last week. And National Inclusion Week is an employment-based project, apparently. I've been reading up about it this morning. But this is a t-shirt from the Alliance for Inclusive Education because, of course, actually, you can't be included in the workplace if you're not trained and qualified to be in that workplace. And disabled young people are still excluded from school on a really shocking basis. Things have become worse since the pandemic. So I really wanted us to just take a moment to remember all the young disabled people out there who are still fighting to get a proper education, including all of the ones who are not recognised as having those needs. In Newham, 0.7% of our young people have what's known as an education and healthcare plan. And that's what you need to get any kind of extra help. So last year during lockdown, if you had an education and healthcare plan, you could still go to school, you were entitled to a free laptop, a social worker checked on you every week, and 3% of young people in other boroughs enjoyed access to those rights. But in Newham, only 0.7% did. So about 3 out of 4 of every young person who deserves extra help at school in this borough is not getting it. And of course, unfortunately, when young people are not having their needs met in school, they're excluded informally or formally. They're very, very vulnerable to gang recruitment and crime. And sadly, again, locally, you know, a significant number are injured or die every year. So we take National Inclusion Week very, very seriously. But remember, employers, you know, ask questions about access to education. Young people are desperate to work, but they need access to the education and training first. I know as parents of young disabled people, you might have something to add before we move on and look at some poems from this week's Pop-Up Poetry Club.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the big problems is that there is still a huge misunderstanding of the difference between integration and inclusion. Excuse me. And we see it all the time in lots of places that we go, where kind of it's like, well, you can get in. Is that, you know, you're all in here together. That's fine. And actually, that's not what inclusion is about. Inclusion is about making sure that the needs of each individual are met, so that they can take part in a realistic way. You know, and I know we're not here, well, we are here to educate, but I think that's, you know, that's very, very much what's missing is that, you know, they go, well, we've done this now. We put ramps in. What more do you want? And it's like, well, you know, what about signs that are legible, door handles at the right height, lift buttons that you can press if you're only small, you know, and the list goes on, let alone the actual learning needs that, you know, some of the disabled youngsters have. And it's kind of addressing that. And so what you're saying is it's about, you know, you don't get a qualification that helps you go to college or university or get a job by just being in the same place as everybody else. You need to be able to access the learning that goes with that place in a way that's suitable to you.
And absolutely, and the same goes, of course, for places of work. So, yes, I'm glad we've had that chat. And in fact, we're coming on to the Pop Up Poetry Club next. And the most recent poem I wrote was a few weeks ago when we were allowed, if you like, to go back to work. And actually, of course, that's simply not practical for us to leave the house at the moment. You know, the dangers of COVID locally and the dangers to us are still far too great. So, anyway, losing my thread as always. Yes, so I wrote a poem about all the things I didn't miss about going back to work. And it's the longest poem I've written probably ever because that I didn't miss just went on and on and on. And I kind of thought, was I really sort of wheeling through these puddles of cigarette butts at the back of buildings to kind of fight for, you know, and then going down endless corridors and and those people said they couldn't make video calls, but amazingly, they've learnt to now, so that has to be a positive thing. And certainly, there's less and less excuse for including, you know, not including people. The more and more ways that open up to include people. And with that, I'm going to say, Julie, what happened at this week's Pop Up Poetry Club?
Well, this excuse me, this week's theme was sea creatures, and I understand it was, you know, sort of everybody really enjoyed it. We basically are called on the telephone by Alison Marchant, our international artist, who's the program leader, and she has access to a system so that nobody has to pay for the phone calls. We pay for them, and we join up on a conference call. She starts to call at about 10:15, and we start ready to go at 10:30 with breathing exercises, etc., until 11 o'clock. And the first half of the poetry club is spent with people either reading out their own poems or poems that they found on the theme of that week. As I say, this week it was sea creatures. So at 11 o'clock, everybody hangs up or ends the call, as we should say these days, sort of more appropriately in the 21st century, and goes off and either has a cup of tea or finishes writing their poem, or perhaps, you know, sort of in my case, sometimes just scribble something down very quickly. And Alison calls us back, and we're ready to talk all together at 11:30, and we have an opportunity to read out our poems if we've written them. Some people don't necessarily write a poem every week, but they do take part, and sometimes somebody might read out the lyrics of a song, and it's very, very different from actually hearing that song. It's actually lovely. Next week's theme is, I think, recycled materials or recycling.
Great. So if you want to join in from home, we'd love to see your poems, but of course you don't have to send them to us. Our email address is info@together2012.org.uk. So now we're going to hear some of the poems on the theme of sea creatures that have been written this week. So Robin or Tracy, would you like to start?
Yep, it's going to be me first this week. So the first one I'm going to read is from Glory Sengo, and it's entitled Alligator, and it is going to be the most friendly alligator I think I've heard of. So here we go. Hello, alligator. Do you want to take some sweet corn? Oh, that was a good bite. Do you want a lettuce? Oh, good boy, alligator. Do you want to drink water, alligator? Good boy, alligator.
Do you know, I read that earlier and it really reminded me of when we were still doing in-person activities and I had my assistant's dog with me. And yes, Glory, I had a wonderful picture up in the office that Glory had done of the dog, Jazz, because he's Ju's pet. And I thought that's absolutely right. But when I looked at that, I thought, I wonder if Jazz is slightly creeping in here under the guise of the crocodile, because I was kind of hearing these things that all of the participants, hear me say regularly to the dog. And, not everybody is as keen on dogs as I am. So, yeah, I looked at that alligator poem and I thought, I wonder. I would ask Glory, but I don't think I want to hear the answer. So this is from Crystal Peasy and it's called Mermaids. Mermaids swim under the sea. Mermaids live under the sea. Mermaids are colourful. Mermaids are half woman and half fish. Mermaids have long hair. Mermaids are so beautiful. And sometimes mermaids leave the sea to sit on the beach. Then the mermaid changes colour. There are many different creatures in the sea. Thank you, Crystal. So, Tracy, do you have one for us next?
Yeah, I've got one by Dawn Barbat, and the title is Seahorse. I swim with the seahorse under the sea. He really takes care of me. He's beautiful and full of colours. He swims all around me and lets me know when danger is coming and when things are fine. We swim everywhere together. When it's time for us to sleep, he lets me lie on his body. He closes his big, beautiful eyes, and I close mine, and his tail wraps around my feet. The seahorse keeps me safe underwater, just like his own baby daughter.
I love the images of that. I really do. I mean, that's better than a dog looking after you, isn't it? That sort of it's so evocative, and you never sort of lose sense of the fact that this is a seahorse, apart from the fact that either it's become very big, horns become very, very small. Julie, what have you got for us next?
Well, following on that theme, this is from Alison Marchant called Seahorses, and she's created this with found words. The seahorse is from 0.6 to 14 inches long and propels itself with a small fin on its back that filters 35 times a minute. Smaller fins on the back of the head steer her. Seahorses anchor to sea grasses and coral, continuously grazing. There are 30 seahorses species. Vulnerable to extinction, their habitat is depleting due to pollution and harvesting for traditional Asian medicine.
And do you want to just explain what you mean by found words?
Found words is literally what it is. It's she finds words that relate to the topic. So she might
But
she
in this case, it's phrases, isn't it? It's not just
it is phrases, but it's facts. It's sometimes it is just words, but it's all linked to the topic of seahorses. So she does a Google search. She has a think about it all. She finds source material, and she picks out key phrases, key words that she thinks are interesting or relevant to the poem. It's a very unique, not very unique, but it is a unique form of poetry writing.
Yes, and it reminds me a little bit, though, of going back to the sort of days of William Burroughs and the beat poets and cutting up sentences and throwing them up in the air and seeing where they come down and putting them together. And one of the things I love about poetry is everybody can write poetry. You know, it's a unique form, it's always unique to you. So, what have we got next, Robin?
So my next one is from Dwayne Bryan and is called Sea Creatures. Sea creatures under the sea, from jellyfish to crabs on the beach. You will see fish if you swim deep. They're so wonderful. You wish you could keep. Don't go too far. There may be sharks which will put fear in your heart. You may see fishermen shipping for fish, which we will put on your afternoon dish. You will see all kinds of creatures you'd be so happy to meet.
Yes, I'm sort of lost in the kind of the ships and the fishing and the food on your plate and the swimming around. Thank you, Dwayne. So I think we've just got one left, and that's by Julie Newman.
Thank you, Ju. This is called Sea Creatures, unsurprisingly. Busy are the shoals of silver fish. The mackerel throw the sea into a turmoil of bubbling fury. Glimpses of the massed fish gives insight into their journeys. Close together they travel. A trawler's dream catch, an artist's dream picture. Swirling water, blue, grey, white foam, and shifting like quicksilver, the fish move on. Slowly, gently floating about underneath the surface, the moon jellyfish, seen within the theatre of temperate seas, move with the currents and tides. They dance a ballet to the beauty of life under the sea. Translucent blue-white strands suspend from ethereal bodies, pirouetting to their own tune. Manatees, with their calf tucked by their reassuring, ponderous bodies, will wander the oceans looking for food. The fish is safe as they hunt down the plant life. Corals live with not a flicker, but give shelter to the seabed dwellers, and the shallow waters teem with crabs, fish, some bright, some disguised. The creatures of the sea, so varied, they call to each other through the depths of deep, dark water. They find each other and join together against the forces of nature. Harsh environments made worse by man give glimpses of what will likely come. Most adapt, most will move to the climates that suit them best, and some will not.
Thank you, Julie. I would say, well, that's a depressing note to end on, but I think a lot of our poets write very impressive, kind of humorous poetry. But in my opinion, it's still kind of there's a strong vein of misery runs
Well,
through most poetry events, I would hazard to suggest.
if I may just say, I'm very, very mindful that the climate conference is in November in Glasgow this year. And so everything I'm reading or thinking about really links to COP 20. I can't remember but the conference itself.
Yeah, and I certainly don't mean to put that down. And we will be moving on in a little bit to look at the latest recycled craft activities. Recycling is absolutely fundamental to our work, and now it's become even more so because people are really they're not able to come out and take advantage of the materials we have. So it's very much about working with what you've got at home, and fortunately there's just so much you can do with it. But we're going to look first at some still life work. On a Friday morning, our art club runs a still life session from 11 to 12. Alison Marchant, our club's programme leader, creates a photograph of a still life, shares it on Zoom, but can also send it to you by text, by WhatsApp group, by email, whatever's most convenient. And we put the picture up later today if you're watching this live, but the picture will be up on our highlights and links page, which is available under the Together 2012 pull down menu, or just click through from the Together 2012 TV page. And there's, as we say, highlights and links, including all of the poems you've just heard, the videos that you will see, the pictures you will see. So if you'd like to join in from home with the still life, just click on the image, which traditionally we get Robin to audio describe without having seen. So here it is, Robin.
Oh, this is a lovely collection. So at the back of the picture is a sort of silver, I guess, with a very maybe a tinge of green. Would you call it sort of clutch handbag or a slightly longer bag? Very sort of uh, 1920s looking, I would have said, with a metal clasp that runs up from the sides and across the top, with like the two bobbles that you push past each other to keep it closed, with a silver strap, and some beautifully kind of stitched on, um, I don't know what the stuff's called, but like sequiny type things to create a floral pattern around the bottom. That was a long description there. Next to that is a swirly shell, a bit like a snail shell, but sidewards. Definitely something actually from an undersea creature, I would imagine, which is a beautiful shell in which runs from kind of bronze in the middle to a much lighter brown at the side. And then in front of that is a collection of 11 or 12 stones, all very highly polished stones. There's green, black, purples, reds, the kind of thing you often see in stalls on markets when they're telling you these stones have various properties to aid your living.
Thank you, Robin. And Alison also audio describes that picture at the beginning of the session, which is quite a mindful session where we're just focused on the image. So again, it really helps people to get to grips with what it is. So I've got a few images from people who've joined in with the clubs. So this is a pencil drawing, and I'm pretty sure that's by Lee Brooker, but as it hasn't been signed, I can't be 100% certain. Now, this is by Dwayne Bryan, and Dwayne has really done a beautiful, beautiful job. He's slightly changed the angle, which I think is really interesting in itself. And he's used pencil and charcoal for the bag, and then he's used, I think, I think it's oil pastels for the stones and for the shells. And that, it's not quite finished to the point when Dwayne's holding it up, but that's really, really beautiful. And as I say, if you need to have the image to finish after the club, it's available on the website, but it can also be sent to you. And then this is by Crystal Peasy, and Crystal's used paint, and she's used that to represent the shapes. And again, I think it's really quite clever. Crystal's almost imagined herself looking at it from over the top, so that it's created very, very different shapes. And then she's painted those shapes in greens, purples, blacks, and used a really sort of bluey grey for the bag. And to distinguish the shell, she's used a yellow. So well done, Crystal. And now we're going to move on and just quickly look at a few things from Tuesday's Make and Natter session of the Art Club. That does what it says on the tin. It's the most sociable of our club sessions, and our clubs are open to any disabled person and anybody you want to bring with you. And we don't define disability, we leave you to do that. We're inclusive of people with learning difficulties, mental health difficulties, neurodiverse people, people with sensory impairments, deaf and hard of hearing people, people with long-term health conditions. If you think the club's for you, then you can pretty much be certain that it is. You would be very, very welcome to join. And at the Make and Natter session, people are either working on projects they've maybe started at the sessions and then really got into, so they've carried on doing that, or Alternatively, Alison leads an activity every week using recycled materials that you can simply join in from home. So this first one is Ellen Goody, and Ellen is still experimenting, and I think very wisely, with drawing around objects, finding different ways to colour them in, and then cutting them out to put them on a different sort of paper. So here she's got shapes in reds and yellows on purple paper that's been cut out and put onto yellow paper, and then she's also felt tip drawings on the yellow paper, and I'm pretty certain those are Ellen's sunglasses, but they look completely different because of the ways that she's coloured them in. So, for example, in the bottom right hand corner, she's used oranges and greens and a sort of ochre colour, and that's all kind of different shades within the same pair of sunglasses. The sunglasses above are in a completely different position. They're outlined in dark, and then they've got this ochre colour in. So it's a really sort of complex thing, and I love the way you're developing that, Ellen. And then finally, it's not a great shot because it was a long way from the camera, but Sophia is joining in with the papier-mâché activities that Alison has started running. We saw in the last couple of weeks, Sophia was making a papier-mâché bowl using a very traditional technique, but untraditionally using old wrapping paper, which just seemed like a great idea to us. What the group have been doing this week is putting papier-mâché round an object that's supposed to stay. Traditionally you make the papier-mâché and you take it off the mould. But this is a papier-mâché activity where you take a recycled plastic container of any size and then you build up the outside with papier-mâché, and that leaves you with something inside that's really sort of tough and waterproof. So that's from Sophia. And now we shall move on to joining in with Tracy, and Tracy leads an activity every week using recycled materials that you already have at home, and this is very much an online activity. So if you go to our website and the Join In From Home link, you can go down to the Join In with Tracy page and find lots more activities as well. But what have you got for us this week, Tracy?
This week I thought I'd have a go at weaving. So I've been weaving a basket.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I do strive to use as much recycled material as I can. But for this one, I thought I'll just use a nice piece of coloured card that I've got in the house. But underneath, I've got some things that we printed out that we no longer needed. So I thought, well, I'll start with that. So this is for this activity. You need some paper, pencil, ruler, scissors, and glue. Then what I did, all of these details are on the site with measurements as well. But on the blue paper, I drew up the shapes. It's not a shape, was it?
Grid.
The grid, yeah, the grid that you need for the actual basket. So it's like a cross shape made up of 5 squares, the centre one being the bottom of the basket, and then the 4 sides. I've drawn on that some 1 centimetre lines so that they can be they all end up being the same. This is a project that takes a while. I didn't do this all in one day because it does take a little bit of preparation. But yeah, it was fun to do. So this is the paper that you then cut all the lines, because those lines are what you're going to use to weave in and out the contrasting colour, and then they create the sides of the basket as well. So here I thought I'm using the edge of the ruler to just push the sides up so that I can then, because I've left the 3 flat, and then just work on the one that I'm using, and it just makes it easier to get the other paper in and out of the slits. There we are. That's my recycled mail that we've used. So I thought that'd be quite a good use of that paper. But any paper would do. That could be some of the recycled leaflets that you get through the post would work equally as well. So this is a little complicated, but once you get started, it's not too bad at all. So one strip of the recycled paper is used to go around the four sides. So starting at one of the corners, you glue that corner down, and then literally take the white paper and feed it in and out of the blue strips of paper. And here we go. This is me sort of a little way through, showing you the side where you glue. So you go round one layer, and then for the second layer, you start on the other side. So, the example, if you start on the outside with the first layer, you start on the inside with the second layer, and then that creates the pattern, the blue, white pattern that you can see. This is this bit I find quite difficult, because what you need to do when you get to the top, you're left with like little fingers, the strips of blue, and you need to cut out alternate ones out. And the alternate ones you've cut out, you then stick inside the basket, and then that leaves you with your white and blue sides, and then you have to stick those together. So that was a bit fiddly. So I used a couple of things. I tried a cocktail stick because that was quite small and I could fit that in. I also tried a cotton bud because it just happened to be something I had in the house. But equally, you could just use another piece of paper folded quite thinly to whatever length is comfortable to sort of slip that into the gap to stick them down. And then there's my completed basket. And that one I used to put a few pieces of nail varnishes in.
That's brilliant, Tracy. It's so easy and effective, and you can just use the same technique to do so many things.
Yes.
So we're going to move swiftly on to our Clockwork Paralympics, after which we will look at the week ahead coming up before we finish with an interview with Jim McClean. So I'm very quickly going to introduce our teddy bear, Tanny, who's a honey-coloured bear wearing a sports outfit and fortunately already has her own medal. What's your teddy bear for this week, Robin?
This is our Love Heart Andy Pandy bear. It is a very pale bear, tiny, and it's wearing a kind of blue and white
Swimsuit?
hooped swimsuit, actually, with a lovely big red heart embroidered on the middle of it.
How very apt, because the Paralympics are still taking place in the, should we say, the Aqua Centre, also known as my bathroom. But this week we've got the return of some of our most seasoned and famous competitors, the Clockwork Caterpillars. If you'd like to join in from home, tell us whether you're going. Well, decide whether you're going to support the toy on the right or left hand side of the screen before it starts. And Robin and Tracy, which one are you going to support?
So today we're going to go with the right-hand side of the screen. And Ju's right, this is where I get super excited. So we're on the right-hand side. We are on our ultra-smooth running track with our highly trained caterpillars ready to go. And they are off to an absolutely zooming start here. A bit difficult from this angle to tell who's winning. The yellow one the green one seems to be going faster, but then has tragically crashed into the barriers. So I would take it that the orange. Oh, I don't know now. Now that's very confusing. Okay, well I will trust the integrity of the onboard umpire, and in fact Birmingham have therefore won the race. So well done, Birmingham! Congratulations.
Yay!
And I will award this really shiny gold medal here to Andy Pandy Bear. This is from Atley, the Orion Swimming Club, which is itself based in the heart of Birmingham.
Wonderful. I know when I was reviewing that video, I thought, I wonder whether Robin, if they're supporting the green, will just see that it went actually out of the frame. But it must have, the orange one must have won because that's the one I picked up. It's just that last week, the one I picked up, you disputed and decided that yours had won anyway. But that's how you become a multi-gold medalist, I think. And what a wonderful medal that is too. So we're going to move swiftly on and look at the week ahead online and offline. This week, as we've said, is National Inclusion Week. Next week is National Libraries Week. But from the Friday the 1st, of course, it's Black History Month. So I've got some recommendations that relate to some of those things. But first, over to the West Midlands.
Can you pass paper?
Yep, sorry, Tracy, there you go.
I've decided I'm writing mine down so that I can actually see them from now on. I think that means that I'm getting close to needing to wear my glasses all the time. Okay, so my first recommendation is a free event. It's an online event, and it is, well, it's been, okay, it is being presented, sorry, it's live, It's being presented by, can you help me out with the name?
Eunice Olumidi.
I'm
We
so
believe
sorry.
that's how it would be pronounced.
I can't pronounce my own name sometimes. Okay, and she is both a model and a broadcaster in her own right, and she is leading a discussion around her journey with the fashion industry and looking at progression and changes. And she's doing this through a series of exhibitions and collections of women's clothing. And that's going to be at the National Museum in Scotland in Edinburgh. And that is also going to fit in with kicking off Black History Month. It's on Friday, the 8th of October, and that's at 7:30 till 8:15. So it's not a long Zoom, it's going to be quite a short one, it's 45 minutes. And at the end of that, there will be time for questions and answers about how clothes have, the nature of clothes have progressed through the years. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, there's some great Black History Month events coming up, and I'm recommending to people that you book early because although it's not always obvious until it says it's sold out, there are often limits on numbers just because of the technical limits of things like Zoom. So the first one I'm going to recommend that you book up for now is the only one that I've been able to find that's actually focused on a Black disabled artist. Although if we find more, and we will be looking, we'll be letting you know. And it's Yinka Shonibare in conversation 3 to 4 p.m. on Friday, the 8th of October. And he's discussing the sculpture that he's creating in Leeds, which won't be unveiled till 2023. So it's a wonderful opportunity to talk to Yinka while he's in process. And it's in memory of the Nigerian migrant David Oluwale, who died as a result of police harassment in 1969. So the further details and the booking link will be up on our highlights and links page. And I'm just going to drop in one more, which is called Black Hollywood, the early years of African Americans on film. And that's also on the Friday, but in the evening. It's 7 to 8:45. It's free, and it's curator and film historian Matthew Jarron from the University of Dundee Museums will explore the early depictions of African Americans on film, and there'll be a particular focus on films from the 1920s and the 1930s made specially for Black audiences. And what people usually talk about is the appearance of Black actors in white films, probably starting with Gone with the Wind, which is at the end of the 30s. And what this does is show you that there was a sort of huge number and very significant kind of Black artists working in the 20s and 30s in Hollywood. Again, I would book those as soon as possible. Robin, what would you recommend?
Yeah, hi there. I am back now after a slight technical break there. First thing I'm going to talk about is on Eventbrite. It's on tomorrow. So it needs to be looked at quite quickly if you're interested. It's called How to Get Started in Night Photography. Now, as an organization, photography has been very much part of what we do. And this is called basically Night Photography 101. And it's about how to photograph at night, particularly if you've got a posh camera, a single lens reflex, or a mirrorless camera. But I think whatever camera you're using, it kind of the techniques that they're talking about, how to get exposures, how you should focus on things, but even talks about the fact that, you know, with the right settings, you can photograph the Milky Way and kind of things far away. So it looks really fascinating. And as I say, it's on tomorrow evening, 7:30 till 9:30, and it's free.
Well, that's definitely one for Julie. What do you recommend for us, Julie?
Well, thinking about the night sky, BBC website has got a lovely section called 13 Minutes, and it's a series of podcasts, images, resources around the Apollo 11 and Apollo 13 flights. The podcasts are brilliant. They're really, really good. And similarly, NASA have got an online feed from the International Space Station, which is available 24 hours a day. When it's in the dark part of the station's in the dark part of the Earth, obviously it's dark, but they've got some mindful music to accompany it.
Wonderful. Tracy, what would you recommend next?
Well, it is one that I raised a few weeks ago, but I'm just going to throw it in there as a reminder because it is getting really good. And that is, it's a Netflix series, so you can pick that up at any point. And it's called Metal Masters. And it's another one of these shows where you get a number of people together and they're demonstrating their art. But they are making some amazing, amazing things out of metal. The one I watched one recently, and it was they were using horseshoes, cutlery, and razor blades, and they had to make a mobile. And some of the things that they came out with were just unbelievable and so inventive and so delicate, considering they're using such a hard material. So I think that is one to definitely have a look at if you haven't already started watching that one.
Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me because I still haven't got round to that. I'm just going to throw in one more, which is Georgia Pritchett. So, and it's an event called My Mess is a Bit of a Life. And Georgia Pritchett has anxiety, but it hasn't stopped her having a hugely successful writing career, and she's won numerous awards. So she's answering questions and reading from her book, My Mess is a Bit of a Life Adventures in Anxiety, which is published by Faber if anybody's interested in buying it. And she'd be answering questions. And it's a digital event, completely free, hosted by the Beaumont Hotel, who you'd think a hotel would be the last organisation to be putting on digital events, but no. So I'm going to look out for more of them. We've just got time, I think, for one very, very quick one. Who wants to jump in?
Okay, I've got one, and it just sounds really fascinating. It's entitled "How I Learnt to Fly: The Hurdles One Man Overcame for Human Flight." Again, it is tomorrow, but I'm sure it will be available afterwards at 12:30. Basically, there's a place called the Imagination Factory who are putting on various events, but this is the story of a guy who invented like a rocket suit, you know, and you wear it on your back, and it's a modern one. You know, something like we used to see in Flash Gordon that, you know, Emperor Ming would wear to fly around or something, and actually, but this is a real one. And they've made electric ones as well now. So I just think it looks absolutely fascinating. And from an access point of view, if I could fly, then the only other step I would need would be to breathe underwater. So there you go.
Which we thought you practically could.
Shh, don't tell anyone.
Coming up next week, we'll be looking out for lots more Black History Month events. We're kind of sad the Arts Council refused our request to organise an event ourselves because there do seem to be very, very little, shall we say, that's focusing on disabled people of colour, but we will be finding some. We'll also be maybe checking out National Libraries Week because it will still be National Libraries Week then. And of course, we'll have art, poetry, craft, join in with Tracy. Sterre is back next week with Join In with Sterre. And of course, we're going to have lots more activities and events to recommend that you can do safe at home, free, online, on TV, or just in your own home. But finally, we've got an interview. I believe his name is Raymond Maclean, but I like to think of him as Raymond Maclean. So you tell me, Robin.
Well, actually, it's Jim. There might be a Raymond out there somewhere. Jim McClean is an artist that I worked with I went over to mentor actually in Belfast as part of a project a number of years ago that Together and the Y Festival were involved in. We've met him before on the show, as we've seen him on stage singing a song and playing the guitar. And
thought I remembered him, and of course I still get his name wrong, to which I can only say, well, it's part of my impairment. Sorry, Ray, Jim.
well, also, just to be confusing, we will also get to find out that he's known as the Cosmic Nomad. So let's see the film.
So goodbye from East London.
Bye from us. Hi. So today I am talking with Jim McClean, who is over in Belfast. In fact, he is our second Belfastian, as rather cutely named by one of my offspring. When Jim was here for a gig a couple of years ago. So Jim, what I want you to tell us first is, when did you first become an artist?
To be honest, I can't really remember a time when I wasn't creative. At some point, I wrote quite a lot when I was a child. As I got older, I drifted away from that. I learned to play guitar when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and started veering more towards producing music and stuff at that point. So I don't know when I would actually have described myself as an artist as such. But it would probably be going back quite a long time.
Of course, I'm not going to ask you how old you are. So you started off. I mean, you wrote as a child poetry, then moved into playing guitar and a bit of songwriting. I mean, can you identify at what point you started to call yourself a disabled artist?
Well, I was aware of my disability. I suppose in my sort of maybe 30s. So going back maybe 10, 15 years is when I would have identified as someone with a disability who was creative. And in relation to disabled arts, engaging with organisations and stuff like that, I think that was probably about going back roughly 10 years when I made contact with places like Arts Disability Forum and some of the Drake Music Collaborative over here and stuff, and various different organisations that I linked into then sort of around about maybe 2011, 2012.
You've mentioned that you're a songwriter and play guitar, but I understand that's not the only art form that you do. So what other kind of art do you take part in?
I do a lot of, I've written a lot of poetry. I've written books of short stories. So yeah, fiction writing, poetry. I've done a bit of comic art for various festivals, small festival venues, and sort of performing arts where I would get into character and do like I did a Burns night where I performed as Robbie Burns. I've done I did a World Book Day where I dressed up as Willy Wonka and drove a carriage up the main road to the local library and did a performance there for the kids, which was wonderful. And I enjoyed that. And we did the whole there's no simple way of knowing which way we are going from the movie. So they enjoy that very much. So I've done that sort of thing where I've dressed in character and did a performance, or maybe read a little bit from a book, or performance poetry and that sort of thing. So I've enjoyed doing that sort of thing in the past.
I also understand, when talking of characters, that you certainly have had the character of the Cosmic Nomad. Is the Cosmic Nomad still around? And who is the Cosmic Nomad?
Yes, Cosmic Nomad was actually that's it, you can see that, I'm not sure. But that was the name of my first CD that I put together in the studio. And so I think the character came off of that. And when we went to perform the songs, then I sort of fell into that characterization. So then when I went to sort of write songs after that, quite often they would have a kind of a cosmic sort of a vibe, because that was the direction I went with initially.
Brilliant. Very David Bowie. That's what I like to think. So what are you doing now, and what are your plans for, this post-pandemic period, really?
I'm not really sure. I mean, what I find is that I've drifted away from. I still do a bit of writing, and I have done a little bit of music, but I've kind of drifted away from the scene, if you understand what I'm saying. I'm not engaging as much with other artists, and obviously there haven't been any events or festivals or gigs or something or anything happening in a while. And also with my disability, my health has been lower in recent times than it had been a while, go back to 3 or 4 years ago. So that sort of leaves me sometimes a little bit isolated. But I also, and sometimes it does go for better creativity. So in relation to where I'm going, I actually can't answer that directly, because I'm not actually sure where I'm going to be with my health, and also I'm not quite sure what the art scene is going to be at the end of all this, because things are only really starting to open up here again. Venues are only just opening up, so I don't know what direction that's going to take.
No, I guess none of us do. Well, hopefully, I mean, with all the arrows that you've got in your quiver, I think that you can definitely fire them at different quarters of the arts world as things open up again, and kind of get enthused yourself. To close then, I'd really like you just to read us one of your poems.
This is called A Train. I am on a train. I am on a train of thought, rolling along the rickety tracks more powerful than a juggernaut. There are passengers on this train. They push and shove and fight for space, never settle down, for the same destination bound, to cause commotion, to cause turmoil, to cause this poor old train to turn around. Concern and confusion, an obnoxious pair, always fight for space, each his own opinion to air. Confusion's muddled expression distorting the reality of every situation. Wiry hair and wonky teeth, he's large enough to occupy 2 seats. Concern is too uptight to sit down, always dresses the same, in grey and in brown. His downtrodden demeanour he wears like a crown, jittery, highly strung, and easily wound. Then comes the decorative and slender lady, always flicking her hair fresh as a daisy, and sure of herself as she enjoys the ride, because this bold beauty, her name is Pride. Presenting as pompous as the gent she travels with, out with as much baggage as he can possibly lift, taking up more space with possessions than anyone should need, because this clumsy passenger, his name is Greed. Then there's the kid with his shiny, happy face, always jumping up and down, running all over the place, or launching random objects, fascinated at where they might land, carrying a tin of Red Bull in his tiny schoolboy hands. He wears t-shirt and shorts, even in the rain, surprising other characters, because excitement is his name. A fancy attaché case and the businessman's gleam is all the fullness of the executive appeal, always reading, typing, texting, keeping busy. His name is Opportunity. He's always at the ready. But one thing I always notice, whether cruising or travelling full of passengers or by oneself, this train, though always homeward bound, never seems to stop. More often crammed with passengers and never room enough. I wish it would just slow down, because I'm feeling rather rough. This train is making me dizzy. I really must get off.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.